Hello and welcome to the ROKER Report podcast. This week we've got another, I think it's fair to say, a poor result to look at. Sunderland drew 1-1 with Doncaster Rovers at the Keep Moat Stadium. A heartbreaking 93rd minute equaliser that was there for everyone to see, apart from Phil Parkinson, who refused to make substitutions until the 81st minute. But anyway, we'll get into all of that here. I've got Gav with me, our evil emperor, as I dubbed him on Twitter. How are you doing, Gav?
I was alright till I remembered I had to talk about Sunderland, and now I'm back to feeling like shit, so let's go, eh?
Yeah, okay, he's raring to go. And Tom Albright, we've never done a podcast before. Tom, how are you doing?
No, I'm fine. How are you, sir?
I am well,
Sir?
thanks.
That's more polite than you normally are, sir.
Yeah, this is these...
I'm reforming my character.
It's not
It's never too late in life
rhetoric,
to
is it?
reform your character, is it?
So I thought today we'd start with some positives, because last week was negative. Everything around Sunderland's negatives. Now, I've picked out what I would say was three positives from the game. The first one being A, Grant Ledbetter's goal, but B, Grant Ledbetter's performance. Yesterday, I thought he played well. What do you make of Grant Ledbetter's renaissance this season, Tom? Because he was a player at the start there that most fans were a bit reluctant to see into the team, but he's actually sort of turned back into the player we thought we were getting 18 months ago.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the guilty party for being that kind of dismissive fan at the start of the season. I thought the end of last season, we've all mentioned it, kind of thought his legs were gone and everything. But obviously, with what come out in the summer, that seems to have been some, with what he was dealing with off the pitch, and obviously that's kind of been affecting him when he was on the pitch. He's had that time away from the club, and fair play to him, he's come back an entirely new player. I think he's one of the few players as well in this side that has actually benefited from Phil Parkinson's system, because we've reduced the workload on his legs. He's not being asked to run, he's not run half as much. He's not being asked to be like that box-to-box player. He's just being asked to keep it neat, keep it tidy, and keep things rolling in the middle of the park. So I think, for all the system has many flaws, the role Ledbetter plays in it is probably one of the few good things you can take from sort of the way we're playing football at the moment.
And I also think, Gav, that Ledbetter and Scowen seem to complement each other a bit, certainly more than Max Power and George Dobson's been complementing each other this season. But do you think Ledbetter and Scowen are probably the best option for us in the middle at the moment?
Yeah, probably down to lack of options in the position more than anything. Like, I think none of us really saw it coming with Ledbetter this season. I didn't. Anyways, start of the season, I thought he was done, really. And he's obviously done really well to turn his career back around, because at a time when everybody would have probably not really bat an eyelid if he'd retired, he's played himself back into contention. He's then established himself as a solid first teamer. But the problem for Ledbetter is you've got to surround him with players who can do his running for him. And Scowen at least offers that. He's energetic. When we signed him, we spoke to Barnsley fans and QPR fans. So these are fans of teams who he played at a higher level with as well. And they all said he's a good box-to-box player, works hard, can put a tackle in. I didn't know he was a good passer or a particularly good dead ball player or a crosser of the ball. So we've seen different facets to his game that maybe we weren't expecting, but it really, and we will get on to Parkinson, but he's been a bit of a victim of Parkinson's system in that he's been played all over the place. And it was nice yesterday to just see him play a bit deeper with Ledbetter, and maybe, I guess, play a position he's more comfortable in. Although he is, like I say, good at getting forward. I think that deeper role with Ledbetter suits him a lot more, and I hope they just get a run of games together, because the big cloud hanging over us that isn't just Phil Parkinson is that we've got a captain who's also a centre midfield player, and I'm just not a fan of him. I'm not a fan of Max Power, and he somehow keeps finding his way back in the team, doesn't he? We need to give, if we start developing partnerships, we need to give them the time to flourish, and hopefully, like you say, Ledbetter and Scowen is the first choice pairing going forward. Because of the slim positives there are to take from yesterday's performance, I would say they were good. They were the ones dictating the game and getting their foot on the ball and moving it around quickly. And yeah, against a team who I actually expected to have a lot of the ball. So I am struggling for positives, but I would say that's probably one, isn't it?
Well, another positive that I had noted down was, and I think this is probably too kind of a way, but I thought our first half performance was strong. That's the word I wrote. We played a pretty solid away from home away performance. We scored our goal, didn't really look like conceding, and it looked like we were frustrating Doncaster. Am I being too kind there, Tom, or do you think the first half yesterday was, one of our. I mean, I think Danny Collins said on the commentary it was the best half of football he'd seen Sunderland play this season, which is probably more of a how bad we've been this season. But do you think that we did play well in the first half yesterday?
No, I think comparatively, yes, you could say we played well in the sense that I don't think we have played that well in the first half, especially this season. But that, like you say, it just shows really how far the bar's dropped down. Because ultimately, while it was objectively a good first half performance, it was against the Doncaster side who I don't really know how they even set up to approach the game. It just, everything they did seemed disjointed. There was no real plan or anything like that. So it essentially allowed us to get on the ball, and we played a lot of football in front of Doncaster. We weren't really breaking the lines too often. We did have a couple of half chances, but ultimately for how much we had the ball and how much we were spraying it about, there is obviously concerns about the lack of opportunities we created. I mean, Ledbetter's goal, for as brilliant as what it is, that's going in 99 times out of it's not going in, 99 times out of 100. Without that, I can't think of a clear-cut chance we really created, apart from maybe when White thought he had all day to hit the ball in the back of the net, and he just didn't. But apart from that, I can't think of any real clear-cut chances. So while the football was good, and it was aesthetically, it was nice to watch, which is a change, because normally it's just lump it up the White and see what sticks. So whilst that was a nice change, and it was good in a sense, it was still severely lacking in a cutting edge and a ruthlessness, which teams like your Ipswiches, your Peterboroughs and your Hulls, who are at the very top of the table, have shown at least 2 or 3 times this season already.
And the last positive, which to be honest we're not really going to touch on that much, is the fact that we're only 3 points from the promotion places. So, as all as it's been doom and gloom, we are lucky that the rest of the league is also struggling along this season. Okay, let's jump into the negatives. So I know Gav was raring to go with negatives today. He was fuming.
Rub me hands together. Nah.
I thought that the number one point that I took from the game yesterday was late substitutions. For me, on 60 minutes, I was making some changes. I kind of eyed up either Embleton coming on for either Maguire or Gooch at that point. I also thought maybe Max Power could have came on a little bit earlier as well. If you're going to go for the defensive approach of trying to see out a game, then that should be with it. Going clearly at half-time, Parkinson's message to the players was shut up shop a little bit, stop doing the things that we're doing well in the first half and try and protect a 1-goal lead. Gav, late substitutions, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, angry were you yesterday at seeing Parkinson, A, advocate in the week 5 substitutions, and then B, basically ignore substitutions in a game whereby we needed them?
It just shows how clueless he is, if I'm honest. Like, this is a big problem we've got with Parkinson. Is, I don't know what it is, he just doesn't seem to trust the players on the bench to make an impact. And it's unforgivable when you've got a squad as big as us. How many teams in this league would kill to have some of the players we have on our bench on a regular basis to pick from? Yet he doesn't give them a sniff. And there was a point in that you could just, like you've just said, at half time, and this isn't the first time we've said this recently. Parkinson, I don't know what he says at half time to them, but they come out with a different team. Slow. A lot of the players that were out there yesterday, I felt, looked tired in the second half, and they saw the game out. I mean, White looked knackered, Gooch looked knackered. Yeah, they were on the pitch at the end of the game. Well, I think, did Gooch go off in injury time? I mean, too late to make a change, and he gets everything he deserves. And I think it was Ant who said it on the Player Ratings podcast, and he was spot on. That draw is on Parkinson, because everybody watching, and we were all talking about it in our group chat. I was talking it to me mates who were also watching the game, and that conversation will have been going on with everybody who was watching the match. Everybody could see what needed to happen, apart from Phil Parkinson. He's the man paid to make these decisions. These points could be really important come the end of the season. We could have been very close to that top 2 right now, talking about a win and looking a lot more optimistically towards the next game. Instead, we're 8th in the table after 12 games in the worst League One there's ever been while we've been in it. And that's on him. And the reluctance to make those changes, it falls to one man. No one else has that decision to play with. It's Phil Parkinson. You've got lads like, we banged on about this last week, but it's true. We've got an academy there producing first team players who can't get on the pitch. I just don't understand it. You need a burst of life in your team. Why are you not bringing on Diamond? Why are you not getting Embleton on a lot earlier than, what was it, the 82nd minute when he came on? What's he meant to do in the 82nd minute? I mean, what I would love to ask Parkinson this: what's going through your head when you're making these decisions? It's honest. If it didn't sound so ludicrous, I would call it sabotage on purpose, because that's what it felt like. Like, what is he doing? Why is he making such decisions that Sunderland fans can see? And I think Ant said it yesterday. We're not football managers, we're fans. But even us sitting watching are going, he's knackered. Why is he not coming off? And then after an hour, you're going, we could probably do with 1 or 2 fresh bodies on here. Like you say, bearing in mind, he said we voted for that 5 sub rule, presumably because we felt it would benefit the players to be able to change up more of the lads who are out there, avoid injuries and stuff. We've seen it in the last couple of weeks. Players like Willis playing through injuries. Now he's out for a few weeks. I mean, we're stretching the players on purpose, and we're not taking the chance to freshen things up when it's needed. And the ultimate price was paid because we threw away 2 points, and that's on him for me. I'm still fuming about it. It really, really ticked us off yesterday, that, because we're all seeing that coming. After such a good first half, like you said, brilliant first half performance from Sunderland. Can't take it away from us, especially from about 25 minutes onwards until half time. We completely dominated the game. Why not capitalise on that? Why go defensive and put yourself in jeopardy? I mean, he was blaming the referee for not giving a penalty after the game. Fair enough, we should have had a penalty, but there's bigger decisions to be made than that. You control your own destiny when you're winning 1-0 in the 90th minute. That's on you.
Gav's turning red here.
Bullseye.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Just run the clock down. Use the other subs.
You're not wrong, but I think a more pertinent point is when we're discussing the timing of substitutions, the first 10 to 15 minutes of that second half was as flat as the game had been all game, because at that point Doncaster still didn't look in the game, and we just kind of slowly drifted off. Now, a good manager will have seen that opening 10-15 minutes of that second half and realised there was an opportunity there, especially at 1-0, where you can throw a different player on. Gooch was already looking tired before he got that reducer. A decent manager there is looking at that, saying, right, well, what I could do is I've got 5 substitutions here at this point. I can throw on someone like Embleton or someone like Diamond to try and make this a 2-0 game. To give someone half an hour to give you that option to change the game positively in your favour. Because, like you say, that opening 10-15 minutes after the second half was really stagnant, and it was really stale from both sides. So when that situation arises where nobody's getting the upper hand anymore, why are you not being proactive with the 5 substitutions you've got and trying to positively change the game at that point? Because with your additional substitutions, you can throw, if you want, 2 or 3 more attacking players on. And if after 15 minutes you're going, this isn't working, we're too open, you can then make an extra 2 changes to pull yourself back from opening yourself out. So it gives yourself a perfect opportunity, whether you agree with the 5 subs or not, where you can try in a burst positively affect that game before then, making a secondary assessment on how your changes have affected that game. You look across to the Doncaster bench. Doncaster made 2 positive changes around the hour mark, and then Doncaster started moving slowly further up the pitch. They were moving effectively in like 5 or 10 yard steps. You could see where the midfielders were picking the ball up. They went from picking the ball up in their own half to the one then picking the ball up on the edge of our final third. At that point, when you're making your change, because we're not making it until they're on our toes, you're just too aggressive. You've waited too long to make your change, because even at that point, if you put an extra body on and see you push those midfielders an extra 5 or 10 yards back, you haven't pushed them out of your half. All you've done is you've just pushed them 5 or 10 yards back, and ultimately you've probably given them an extra couple of seconds on the ball and given the wingers an extra bit of space. So when you wait until the point when Parkinson's waiting to make changes, the damage is already done. It's not soon enough, and I think that's becoming a real issue, and it's starting to arise in games now, because we are starting to concede late and we are starting to struggle to see games out. Because as an opposition manager, you must look at our side as well and see the substitutions we make on a weekly basis and think, if I put a player on the 60-65 minutes mark, I'm giving them half an hour to 25 minutes to change the game. I can then get on the front foot. I'm going to have 10 minutes on the front foot at a minimum because we don't make a change before 70 minutes. And then by the time we make a change, all we end up doing is making a like-for-like substitutions. We never make a change to even respond to what's happening on the pitch. We never put an extra midfielder on, or we never go to 4 at the back. It's like, right, we'll just put Graham on for Wyke, or we'll just put Diamond on for Gooch, or we'll put whoever, you know what I mean, we'll put Power on for Scowen. So we never change what we're doing. It's just the same, but with different players.
Hey, do you know the thing is though? I know I just said this before, but just think about it this way. So Doncaster, right, for the board went up 5 minutes of injury time, I think it was. They were on the ball. They were the team, obviously 1-0 down, trying to get a goal back, right? Mm-hmm. So why is he not looking at that and going, we need to waste a little bit of time here to take the pressure off and slow the game down? So let's make a sub one a minute. He had 4 subs left. Make one in the 91st. Get the next lad ready. We've got all these subs we can use now. Waste time. Slow the game down. Stop any momentum Doncaster can actually develop. There was none of that. We just sat there and waited for it to happen. What happened? And what happened in the 90th minute could have happened at any point in that second half because Parkinson just did not react to the fact we had slowed down. You could see the energy levels of the team dropping. Players like Charlie Wyke up front, I mean, he's absolutely hopeless, but he does run about, and he was knackered. He was absolutely frigged, you could just tell. Put someone else up front and let them do that running for half an hour. I mean, it's not rocket science, that. How many people here are played footy, listening, people played footy, coached kids' football teams and things like that? You don't have to be an expert to know that if a player's looking tired, you take them off and you bring some fresh legs on, even if it is a like-for-like change. You know what I mean? Wyke yesterday was useless. He didn't win a header. He couldn't trap a bag of sand. He got pushed all over. There was one instance which just summed his performance up, where the centre-half won a header in their box, and he clattered through the back of Wyke when he won the header, and it was because he was just stood still staring at the ball. Like, he was useless. That was Wyke at his worst sort of thing. How did he see the full game out yesterday? Like, that's just bad management, in my opinion.
Another thing is, as well, in the second half, Maguire had totally drifted out that game.
He's another one, isn't he? He's another one who's just looked hopeless from the first minute. Just, why is he on the pitch still?
This is what I was going to come to, this is my annoyance. Any decent manager can say at 60 minutes, Wyke was tired, right? And Maguire became completely ineffectual in the second half. You've got 5 subs. We've got plenty of attackers on the bench. We could have made 2 changes that could have pushed Doncaster back into their own half again. We could have put ourselves in the ascendancy there and killed the game off because we've got the attacking options on the bench where we could have altered those 2 players and at least put Doncaster on the back foot. And instead, we haven't. Darren Moore has stood on the touchline and he's been allowed to make substitutions which have just got Doncaster on the front foot, and our response was just absolutely nothing. And that's what's driving people up the wall, is there's no tactical nous there at all.
Connor, let me ask you this. I know you're hosting, but let me ask, why do you think he doesn't trust squad players? Because you've been around them, right? You've been around those players. Why does he not? What is it? Why does he not trust them to come on and do something? This isn't just a recent problem. This is something that he's always been like this. Like, why does he not trust like Jack Diamond to come on and carry the ball up the pitch, or Danny Graham to run about for half an hour? Like, what is it? What is about this bloke that he just doesn't trust squad players? I just don't get it.
I think it's because he's I spoke to somebody yesterday who said that basically he's a Tranmere Rovers manager. That's his level. You know, he's meant to be a smaller kind of club, and he's probably never ever had an academy to work with. He's probably never ever had players who are 18 years old who are capable of playing first team football. And I think the reality is, and we all know this, he's a old school manager who values reps in the game over actual ability. He will look at Max Power and he'll look at Dan Neil and he'll not look at how they're playing. He just looks at the fact, well, Max Power's played 200 games in League One, so logically he's the option. And I don't even think you have to have been around him to have noticed this. You know, it's who he is as a football manager. He's the standard League One manager who probably works best with little resources and getting the best out of sort of 14 players. That's probably why he's so reluctant to make substitutions, because it's almost ingrained in him that you kind of just plough on with what you've got. I mean, he was the wrong appointment at the time, and we all know this. And I think it's become patently obvious that he's still the wrong appointment. And we're basically just going to be farting into the wind, pissing in the wind, not farting in the wind. Wrong saying. We're going to be pissing in the wind though, as long as he's manager here, because he won't change who he is. He won't change how we're playing. We'll go to Fleetwood next week and we'll line up exactly the same way. And we'll probably be, if we do go 1-0 up, we'll be playing the same way in the second half. He doesn't learn from his errors. We saw this. We played Fleetwood in the Cup the other week, and so many of them good young players impressed and were better than what we've got, and we were creating chances. And he's never put them back in since. That's the sign of me. He's just a bad manager. But another point I want to make to jump onto half-time, what is he saying in the dressing room at half-time? Because I watched that game, in the first half I thought, we will win this game if we continue playing in this manner. I don't think we created many chances, but I think we would have created chances over the 90 minutes if we continued playing like that. What is he actually saying to the team at half-time? Like, is he literally going, right, okay, we've got a 1-0 lead, we're not going to try and get a second, we've just got to see it out? Because that's what it looks like to me. I mean, I don't know what you think, Tom. What's your view on that?
Does he command respect in the dressing room? I know we're kind of like interviewing the host here, but is he the kind of manager where the players are respectful or even fearful of him, like they would be with a Keane or a Di Canio or a...
I've not been in the dressing room. I can tell you from my experiences with him, he's a very quiet bloke. He's the kind of bloke where if you walk past him in the corridor, he might not say hello to you. Whereas Jack Ross, while I had sort of other issues with him, he was always a big person. He was always friendly. He would talk to people. Phil Parkinson's kind of not like that. He's kind of reminds me of like the awkward IT bloke at work. Like that's kind of the feeling you get, and I've said that because Gav's a IT person, but that's what he kind of reminds me of. He's just like, oh, I don't want to say hello. He'll walk, and if he's the kind of person where if you're walking down the corridor with him, he'll try and find another route so he doesn't have to bump into you. That's the impression that I got from him. Now his assistants, like Steve Parkin, was always the opposite. He's the guy who looks after training. He's the character around the place, whereas Parkinson was kind of this, it's just a bit of an odd bloke, really.
But just to bring it back to your question, so I can kind of answer that question, is I think that's the problem. That's the feeling I get. I don't think he cuts across as a confrontational kind of bloke. So I think when he's in the dressing room, I can't imagine him being a shouty gaffer or someone who's going to really G you up for when you're going out that second half. You see players come out, and I don't know whether it's just a kind of a fantasist idea, but I kind of look at it and think, as a footballer, what do I want when I'm coming out the second half? And I think you want a gaffer who's going to be shouting at you, he's going to be driving you, he's going to give you that impetus, that energy, so you start the second half quickly. And I just don't feel like Parkinson's giving anyone that. And I'm not sure Parkinson's actually commanding respect from the players. I think the way a lot of players are playing their football, just under his reign. There's times where I look at the players and I think, are you actually just completely ignoring what he's saying? Because I don't know what else you can do. Like, you Lyndon Gooch, like, Gooch knows how good he is. We know how good he can be. He's played 5 different positions in 11 games. Like, is there a point where Gooch is just being like, I'll play, but I'm not going to listen to you because you quite clearly don't know what you're doing? And he's a player who's expressed in public and on other podcasts that I want to be playing further up the pitch. I want to be buzzing in and around Charlie White. I want to be getting on the edge of the box. He's played every position but, and I just kind of think our players, I don't blame them for it. Our players just, not fearful of him and ultimately not as respectful as maybe they should be, but because he's not earned their respect.
You've kind of hit the nail on the head there. And if you think about, Gav mentioned the Charlie White miss yesterday, and I think about Will Griggs' miss the week before where he had an open net and it looked like he was going to get clattered and he pulled out. I feel like this team won't walk through walls for this manager. I feel like this team isn't committed to this manager, and you're seeing that by yesterday. Charlie White didn't go to attack. He didn't have the desire to score that goal. And I feel like if you had a manager who had everyone on the same page and had that kind of getting everyone together as one, heading in the same direction, I think you would have saw Will Grigg would have put himself at risk to score last week. You would have saw Charlie White, showing the desire to actually go win the header rather than let the ball come to him. And I think that's it's a minor thing that maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't think you would see, a Jose Mourinho team when they're in that peak and everyone's playing for that shirt, they would have went and showed the desire to score them goals, Gav.
You know what it is? You're bang on there. Like, it's like, I don't think it's rocket science what needs to happen here. And say Parkinson got sacked, right? And on Friday night there's a new manager. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just theoretically, right? All that person has to do to get an extra 10% out of these players is G them up, make them feel better about themselves, good man management, go back to basics, play people in the proper positions in a system that suits them, and make them feel good about themselves, let them express themselves creatively. This is the most creatively suppressed Sunderland team I've ever seen. I just think it's like you said before, Gooch has played about 5 different positions. It's because they're playing to a system rather than, you can't imagine them going out, for instance, and saying to Lyndon Gooch, you just get the ball, son, and drive at them and do what you want. Like, giving players free roles. That's off the table in this team. There's no way that happens. And that's why Aidan McGeady's not fancied by him, because he's the type of player that you let that happen with. It's probably why you're not going to see much of Diamond unless it's playing out of position at wing back. It's probably why Maguire's been shit all season, because he's a player who loves to just do what he wants. There are certain players in this team who have to be allowed to express themselves to get the best from them. Players like Ledbetter, players like Power will do a job. You know what I mean? They'll go in and they know their role in the team, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the defenders being told this is your role and this is how you perform it and play it out. But your attacking players have to be creative. And at the minute, unless our fullbacks get down the byline and cross the ball in, where's the creative play coming from? That's a big problem with Parkinson for me. And as long as he's here, you're not going to see enough like that. I remember I said it actually before the game in our chat. So when was the last time you saw Sunderland score a screamer? And then we went and done it yesterday, right? Which was quite ironic. But it's like under Ross, and I don't think Jack Ross was a particularly good manager, and I'm not saying, well, things would have been better under Jack Ross, but my point is that when Ross was manager, we often scored good goals because he let his attacking players play with freedom. And I don't think it would take that much more if a new manager came in to get more out of this squad. That's just, and I honestly, I defy anybody to tell us the squad's not good enough. Look at every other squad in this league. This is more than enough to get Sunderland over the line. It's just they're not being played properly. I mean, just to finish on that point, but I mean, how can a manager have a striker with the record Will Griggs got in the lower leagues and not have even attempted to get something from him? I'm not saying Griggs the answer by any means, but there's a reason why when he started last week he missed from a couple of yards out. Tell me he's ever had the arm around him and been told, I believe in you, son. You're going to get a run of 6 or 7 games to prove yourself. Just don't worry about it. If you have a bad day on Saturday, don't worry about it. You'll be in the team after that. Like, that's what you need, don't you? You need a manager who's going to make these players feel confident about themselves. And I don't think you have to be an expert to say that that's not happening. It's not happened all season. And that's why we struggle to score goals, really.
I think, just to kind of close this one off, and then we'll move on to more Parky bashing in a minute. But if you look at the Aidan McGeady situation, probably the last time I mentioned him, Aidan McGeady isn't in the squad essentially because he's confrontational. That seems to be what we've got from this. Is he's maybe difficult to manage. He maybe has high expectations. You kind of heard that thing about the Accrington Stanley game where he went through the players because we were drawn against Accrington Stanley. To me, that just shows Phil Parkinson. He's avoiding the confrontation. It's easier for Phil Parkinson not to deal with Aidan McGeady to get something out of a very good player than it is to have him in there and maybe causing him issues because he's asking him why we're playing in this way. If Aidan McGeady was in this dressing room right now, I don't think he would be standing up for the way that we're playing. He wouldn't have accepted that second half performance yesterday. And I think while McGeady's got his issues, I'm not saying he's the answer. He's one of them players in there, though, like what Lee Cattermole would have been previously, who would stick his hand up and say, no, this isn't right, we're doing this wrong. And I think Parkinson doesn't respect that.
He treats the players like they're not intelligent. We know that Embleton, Gooch, McGeady, and these are intelligent footballers, and it just feels like he's not allowing them, he's not treating them like intelligent footballers. He's just trying to put square pegs in round holes because he doesn't know what else to do with them. And I just think, like you see with the McGeady thing and the confrontational edge about it and all the rest of it, is sometimes you've got to have a little bit of chaos. Sometimes you've got to have that like troubled genius in that squad, because it's those players who, yes, they may be confrontational, yes, they may be demanding, but these are the players who are going to give you the cutting edge. And whether you're a McGeady fan or not, you kind of look back to the end of last season when we really needed someone to stand up and be that creative outlet. McGeady stood himself up and he put in 2 really good performances at Wembley at the end of that Jack Ross season, especially as a means of standing up and saying, look, if somebody needs to stand up and grab it by the balls, I'll be that kind of player. And if for him to do that, he's got to be a confrontational arsehole because we're not beating that Rick and Stanley, then so be it. Sometimes you've just got to accept that it's got to come as a package for you to be able to have those luxuries.
Just to go back to something Connor said as well, about how McGeady wouldn't have stood for that, and I don't know if we're going to come on to this or not, so I might be jumping the shark here, but like when Parkinson comes out after the game and tries to make excuses for us drawing and tries to talk the performance up, I mean, that's unacceptable. Like, it shows how far the standards have slipped at the club, whereby the manager's coming out in front of the press and he's trying to protect his players, but he's actually embarrassing them by saying what he's saying. Like, there's no way you should be coming out after that and saying that we were hard done to. Your players have just tossed away 3 points in the injury time, and you're coming on the radio and saying, well, that's a good result because these beat Lincoln and Ipswich at home. We're Sunderland. We're meant to be the biggest club in League One. Act like it. Don't act like you're a Bolton manager or a Colchester manager anymore. Act like the manager of Sunderland. Come out and say that's not good enough. Come out and let the fans know that you are on the same page as them, because not one Sunderland fan came out after yesterday and went, well, that's a good point, because they beat Ipswich and Lincoln at home. I'd be furious if one of my mates came out and said that. That's what me mates. If another Sunderland fan come out and says that, I'd be like, what are you on about? You can't think like that.
You did jump the shark there, Gavin. That was the next point, was Parky's post-game comments. But I'll read out what he said. The particular thing that upset me. He said, our boys have got to take a lot of heart from the way they played today. These beat Ipswich and Lincoln. So Gav's already had his 2 cents on that. But Tom, what do you make of that? Sunderland normalising the fact that Sunderland drawn away at Doncaster is a good result.
What I would say is we're all guilty of saying things and thinking, why did I say that? And as Sunderland manager, Phil Parkinson should probably think before he speaks, because saying stuff like that, for me, is just outright offensive to everybody who's paid to watch that game of football. It is just so detached from the reality of the situation. It's offensive to say that the manager of such a highly regarded club has such low expectations for the squad of players he has, and it's just one of those things. I think, why have you said that? It got at that point. If we cast back to last season, there was a press conference where Parkinson just decided he didn't want to do it and sent Steve Parkin to do it, and everyone was like, well, what's he doing? Is he doing it to avoid the scrutiny and so on and so forth? And when he made those comments, I just thought, you know what it is? I'd rather you bottle it and send your assistant to take the flak than come out and say stuff like that, because it is just flat out offensive. Don't subject Sunderland fans to the football that we've been subject to this season so far, and then come out and go, oh, well, that was all right, wasn't it? Because no, it fucking wasn't all right. There was no part of that game, bar maybe the 20 minutes before half-time, where you could go, that's all right. As a Sunderland fan, where you could go, that's all right, I'm happy with that. We've underperformed almost all of this season. The football has been turgid to the point where a lot of people are just completely switching off, not buying the stream and passes and so on and so forth. And I don't know why he's saying these things, because it's almost like he's coming out there just to wind everyone up when he's saying these things, because we know it's not acceptable. The players aren't thick. They know that results like that aren't acceptable either, right? So why is he coming out and trying to normalise this kind of stuff? If that's the best analysis he has to offer post-game, I'd rather him just not provide any analysis at all, because I would rather him hide away and say nothing, but be annoyed that he's not said anything, than be as annoyed as what I get when he comes out and he just says the stupidest shit.
Do you know what it is, right? I'm just looking at it now. We have the last 5 games. We've won 1 game out of the last 5, all competitions, right? We haven't kept a clean sheet in that time. So really, he should be coming out and he should be saying it's not good enough. We haven't kept a clean sheet since the Ipswich game, since the Gillingham game. Sorry, we beat Ipswich 2-1. Very fortunately, we lost to Mansfield in the FA Cup, which was an absolute embarrassment.
The worst result in our history. Somebody wants.
Yeah. Losing to Fleetwood in the trophy, I guess nobody cares about. It's still a loss. We lost to MK Dons, who never won away from home since September 2019. And then threw away 3 points in the 93rd minute or whatever it was. Like, be honest with. He cannot seriously think that's okay? Do you reckon he went in the dressing room and slammed them? Because I doubt he did. I actually think Phil Parkinson believes the shit that comes out of his mouth. It's after every game. I can't remember. Charlie White had a shocker like last month. I can't remember who against. He's had that many, to be fair. But he had a shocker against somebody last month, and he come out after the game, and the first thing he did was praise Charlie White when everybody was slagging him off. Like, to be honest, that's probably why you're in the position you're in, where you're hanging on to your job by the skin of your teeth, because nobody believes the shit coming out of your mouth. And if you're coming out and saying it in front of fans, what do the players think of him? They must think he's a joke. There'll be players listening to this. I imagine that I would want to know what the fans are saying, and I guarantee that they're nodding their head when we're saying this stuff. They've got to be, because it would piss me off if the manager of my team and the manager of the players I play with was so inept that he comes out after games and thinks throwing away 3 points when you're in the driving seat is acceptable.
Do you feel that he's almost trying to normalise mediocrity, because that'll bring less scrutiny than if he does hold his hands up and go, well, this is shit, it needs to get better? Because as soon as he comes and says that, and like Connor said before, he's not a confrontational kind of bloke. Do you think he's afraid to say those things, be it publicly or to the players, because it's going to bring a level of scrutiny upon himself that he knows he can't adjust, because he's proven that he cannot adjust this side accordingly? So do you think he's trying to normalise just us being bang average, because if he gets to that stage, he can get away with shit like this?
I don't know. I honestly just think he's a dead man walking and he knows it. Like, I think he knows he's gone soon. He knows that as soon as this takeover happens, he'll be out of a job, and it's pointless even coming out and fighting battles anymore, because he knows like I could be gone in a matter of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that's all it is. I think Parkinson knows as well as we do that he's not going to hang on to his job for very much longer. But I can't remember who I think it was Bomber made this point on the player rating show yesterday. Wouldn't you think anybody in that position, wouldn't you think they would come out fighting to at least, even if it's not to show these owners that he's worth keeping, but to show whoever employs him next, or if he goes for another job after this, that he's not a bad manager and he's just been a victim of circumstance. Like, he's not going to get a good reference off Sunderland. Can't, because the way who would want this man in charge? Like, I'm not joking. Like, look at Mansfield appointing Nigel Clough in League Two. Like, would they want this idiot? How many League Two clubs would want Phil Parkinson as their manager? Why is he our manager? I'm past the point now with him. Like, he has to go. People saying, oh, well, it's ultimately down to the ownership and this, that, and the other. All right, fair enough. And maybe we can't appoint a new manager until there is an ownership change. But surely we're past the point now of like allowing him to keep making these mistakes and throw away promotion, which it feels like he's doing. Like, I honestly don't think we could do any worse than sacking him and putting a caretaker in charge. Like, let somebody else just take the team, even if it's for the next game, and then the takeover's done by the Wigan match. Like, just get rid of him. Seriously, we couldn't do any worse than putting some old bloke in from the social club and get him to pick the subs. Honestly, I'm at that stage with Parkinson where I just can't understand why he's still got a job. It must be money related, but again, I'm really like worried now. I'm worried about going into this Fleetwood. Barton will be licking his lips playing Sunderland right now. Like, couldn't ask for a better time to be playing Sunderland at home. He'll be loving it. And if we're sat here next weekend talking about another loss with this bloke in charge, we could be looking at another year in League One if we're not careful. Like, we've got Burton to come after that, who are a bogey team. Lincoln away, where we got comfortably beaten last season, who are doing all right. Not long after that, we could be going into Christmas in a very bad position. It's like, how long do you let this carry on? How long do we allow Parkinson to just stay in charge because circumstances dictate that we can't? Maybe it's not wise to sack him yet because there might be an ownership change. Like, continuing to leave him in his position is actually causing irreparable damage, in my opinion. How we're still in a position where we're close to the top two is unbelievable, because this football this season's just been horrendous. And the last couple of results have sort of summed up the way the season's gone so far. I mean, no wins in the last four in all competitions is pretty criminal in my view. For a team who should be looking to challenge regardless of whether it's a joke competition, it's the League One and League Two trophy, Sunderland should be looking to compete in that. We're through, fair enough. But then the FA Cup, you kind of be getting beat off a team who are as crap as Mansfield. I mean, I'm rambling here. Like, I'm just so pissed off by it all. Fuck me, man.
But Gav's on
Just
the
it's-
fence
it's unreal,
anyway.
man.
So
Oh, yeah,
it's good to
I
know
am,
Gav's
aye.
position. He's on the fence at the minute. I'm going to jump to some Twitter questions. One thing that's been pointed out to her, and it's kind of just sort of broke as we're recording, is number one, the Sun are reporting that Nigel Pearson and that man Kevin Phillips, who's always linked whenever any sort of vacancy around Sunderland comes, but he would be coming in as an assistant. Somebody called Matty Pauls, an American financier, is apparently also interested. So Tom, we'll throw it to you so Gav can get his breath back.
And
What do
lower
you
that
make
blood
of this
pressure.
Nigel Pearson and Kevin Phillips news, and what do you think of another potential new name thrown into the takeover that is Sunderland AFC?
Well, it's just takeover bingo in it. It's just, pick a random millionaire and
Or
and rinse
energy
and
drink
repeat.
owner.
Yeah, or energy drink owner, yes, of course. We wouldn't want to discount those guys, would we? With his cut off AFL badge. But no, as far as the ownership's concerned, I've never even heard of the guy, much like I hadn't really heard of Dreyfus. So I'm probably not going to pass comment on that purely because if that is legit, I would assume it's very much in its infancy. So I don't know how much we can say on that. In terms of the Pearson Phillips thing, we've been here before. It's been discussed many a time. There just seem two names that seem to be dragged up every time the name, the word Sunderland managerial vacancy also pop up. For my money, probably not what we want, not what we need. I think if we are serious about improving as a side and getting back into at least the championship, is we probably need to be looking for managers who've got a bit more of a philosophy and identity. And I don't really think Pearson really brings much of that. Though he would bring the kind of confrontational, that energy, that bit of this bloke's a bit of a mad bastard energy. That's that's part of what we need. It isn't all of what we need. We need someone who's going to really work in with the academy, the facilities, and the squad they have. And as well, at the moment, with salary caps, who is able to work to quite a stringent budget. So on a personal opinion, I don't think Pearson and Phillips would be the answer going forward. And as far as the ownership's concerned, I honestly don't know how far into that process they are. So we don't know how legitimate a candidate he is.
Gav, now keep this one short and sweet.
Yeah, I'm just going to write that straight off because if the plan is to appoint a sporting director, then why would they be discussing who the manager is now? Like, the sporting director should be making that decision. It's just a lazy Sunday rumour in a tabloid newspaper that often talks shit.
No.
So yeah.
The Sun. I thought it was the most trusted one.
It's not happening.
We've got another question here, back onto our good friend Philip Parkinson. From Cameron Johnson. Do you feel Parkinson's one big win away at Fleetwood on Friday from getting Sunderland back on track? Or could defeat theoretically be the last game for his managerial reign at Sunderland? Do you see how bad I am at reading out loud there? I really fucked that one up there. Gav, what do you make then? Do you think Parkinson a win next week against Fleetwood would all be rosy in Sunderland world?
No.
And do you think a defeat could well be the nail in that coffin?
It's like I said, he's a dead man walking. I don't think it matters if we win, lose, or draw. As soon as there's an ownership change, he's gone. Because no new ownership or sporting director worth of salt is going to want to work with him. He's an absolute dinosaur. He'll be the first one out the door. So no.
Okay, Ross Hall, he asks, why would a manager who is scared of making substitutions vote to increase the amount he can to 5?
Because he's a divvy. There we go.
Okay.
Answer that one quickly.
Tom, do you agree, or do you think Parkinson's maybe more than that?
Probably what Gav says, just cognitive dissonance, isn't it? Like, why you're voting for 5 subs, but you're a man who only really makes 3 substitutions when you're absolutely pushed to do so. Just, what he says, what he believes in, and what he does, the two just don't compute.
So let's just, in this one from Neil Greaves, let's just say that the takeover doesn't go through or it takes longer. How long do you think it will take for Sunderland to get rid of Phil Parkinson, or do you think he will be here for as long as the current owners are in? Gav, what do you make of that?
I think if that is, just say we have a Dell-style fall through of the takeover, like at the last minute, then I think we'll sack him. I only think the reason he hasn't been sacked is because of that takeover. So if the whole thing falls through and they're like, it's a bit like after the Dell thing where they had to just and after the Mark Campbell takeover fell through, they had to just at a point just say, right, we need to start planning for the future again, regardless of the takeover situation. And I think they would have to do that. They know as well as we do, we have to get promoted this season. The longer you leave him in charge, the less time you have to actually make a positive impact. Like somebody, I think it was when Cameron's question was, we probably are only one win from getting back on track. So really, changing manager while we're still in the mix is probably a good thing. A bit like when Jack Ross left, you knew he had to be replaced, and although we were still within touching distance of the playoff places and the promotion places, we made a change because we thought it was for the best. Obviously, they made a terrible appointment, but you would like to think they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. So,
good one, Gavin. Another point to make there is, can the club afford to pay up 18 months of Phil Parkinson's contract, which would probably be about 300,000 quid in this climate?
Weighed up. Can they afford to not go up?
Well, they didn't go up last season.
Is it a hit you just accept?
You've also got to consider is spending 300 grand now to get rid of Phil Parkinson, but you give yourself a better chance of going up. Is that a risk worth taking? Sometimes you've got to speculate to accumulate. So, if Sunderland, we got rid of Parkinson, appointed new managers, went on a brilliant run and somehow got promoted, whether it was automatics or via the playoffs, then all of a sudden that £300,000 is the best 300 grand you've spent all season.
The question here from Stephen Scott: can we not put more pressure on Donald, and do you believe all this takeover talk? Well, last week, Stephen, we did talk about the takeover at length. As fans, can we put more pressure on Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven? I don't really think we could, because A, they're not involved, B, we can't go to games. The only really way to hit them at the minute is not buying the streams, but I feel like not buying the streams would also be a bit counterproductive, because A, fans want to watch the game, so I don't really know. But do you guys have any more to add on that? Do you think we can, as fans, put more pressure on the owners?
No. What can you do? What can you really do? I mean, they're trying. We believe they're in talks to sell the club. Until we hear differently, then what can we really do? I mean, if they manage to fuck the Dreyfus one up like they did with Dell, then it's fair game, isn't it? Like,
yeah, but even then, what could you do?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. We've tried what, once or twice, and it's just kind of swatted away, and they've got this this ability of that. I feel like they're probably detached enough from the club now that whenever the fans pop up, whenever the Donald out hashtag gets a bit of traction again, and personally I don't blame them, because they've positioned themselves well, is they put themselves in a state where they can just go, we'll leave it a couple of weeks and it'll just be gone. And it's just because, collectively we can't keep up the momentum of, keeping that pressure on constantly, because it would just, whether you agree or not, it does tend to divide the fan base, not so much down the middle anymore, more of a 70-30 split, but it just creates tension where there doesn't really need to be any tension, especially if it's not producing any results.
Last question here, and I think this is actually one we touched on last week, but it's from Jacko1989. Is anyone concerned about the amount of fans that are losing interest? Supporters are finding other things to do with their time. I don't know how they're finding other things to do when there is nothing to do at the minute. But I think there is an argument to say that supporters are losing interest. I've certainly got friends who are season ticket holders who are now not watching the games on the weekend because A, the football's crap, B, the service the club are providing is better, but it's still just one camera, which makes it very difficult to watch. And sort of as an aside to that, the coverage against MK Dons made the game more enjoyable for me. I got more out of that match because there was better coverage. So I am concerned about fans losing interest. Gav, what do you think?
Well, anyone who read the site this week will have seen a really good article from Craig Davies about his kids. And it resonated with quite a lot of people. I noticed when it was being shared around on social media, lots of people saying, I know exactly how you feel. My kids are going through the same thing. It's like Sunderland are a club traditionally built around like families go, like dads taking their sons and mums taking their kids and what have you. It's like it's always been a bit of a family club. But I've got a nephew who's 16. The whole time he's supported Sunderland, we've been crap. Like, he went to Wembley a few times, obviously, which is great, but he's never seen us win there. But the team generally in league performance has never been good in his lifetime. And I'm worried that right now we're not trying enough to keep those fans on board. The young fans who really do have more to do. They can just pick their phone up and find a million things more interesting than watching Sunderland lose to MK Dons. It's and every club's in the same position. I know that we're all in the same boat at the minute. But even there's lads in ROKER Report, like I'll not name him obviously, but one of the lads spoke to me the other day, and he's like, I'll be honest with you, I haven't even watched a game this season because I've just totally got no interest in it. And I don't blame anybody really. Like if I didn't have a vested interest in doing ROKER Report, like there might have been times this season where where maybe I don't give it enough attention to the games. A bit like I have with maybe the Premier League coverage and stuff and all the football that's on Sky and that. I mean, because there's more football, I'm probably watching less of it, which is a bit strange. But with Sunderland, it's just there's very little enjoyment to get from it, and wouldn't it just be nice to like come away and think we're playing really good football, we're blowing teams away without even with the crowds not being there. Like I got that little buzz when we played Oxford away, and there was the lads behind the stand, and the players actually like celebrated for the fans who were peering over the bloody with the ladder. Like that, I got a little buzz out of that because I felt a bit more connected to the team on the pitch. But other than that, we've had nothing really this season to feel cheerful about. Which is why I think if there was a manager change forthcoming, they wouldn't have to do a lot really to get the fans on board because we just need to be playing better football. And I think ultimately, if the team are winning every week and playing good stuff, everyone buys into it, don't they? And they get on the bandwagon, and it sets us up for when we do get back in the stadium to be quite positive about it. Like I feel right now, say that the government came out and said Friday night you can all. I don't know what 5,000 fans can be allowed in the Stadium of Light. Just say theoretically that happened. I don't know if there'd be much of a buzz around it. How many people actually want to go and watch us at the minute? The crowds would be pretty low, wouldn't they, if all this wasn't going on?
I think you're probably right there. Do you think that sort of there's a lot of fans who maybe find other ways to stream the games? Do you think fans would feel less inclined to do that if the football was better and thus would make the club a bigger revenue stream? Do you think that actually the quality of the football in the stream itself, I know they've made effort, and I'm not hammering that because I know it's cost a lot of money for them to fix. But do you think that it would stop people maybe pirating streams, Tom, if the football on offer was better and you felt like, yeah, okay, they deserve to take my £10 a day, or is that me living in cuckoo land?
I think you're onto something there in the sense that in an age of instant gratification, which we're all guilty of, when you pay your money, you want to be entertained. And right now, you're paying £10 a go to watch Sunderland and be not entertained. I've found myself sort of 4 or 5 times this season. I've spent money on a stream, and after an hour, I'm kind of flicking through my phone or I'm in the group chat because it's genuinely more interesting than what's happening on the pitch. So if you can't captivate an audience that's being brought up on watching football, like I was going to games before I even really understood what was happening. So, people who've been brought up on that ability, who'll watch football and watch 3, 4, 5 games in a row if they could, not being able to engage for 90 minutes is something's going drastically wrong. And when you can't engage with something that you've spent your money on, then you're not getting your money's worth. But I think another problem is, and I do think it's a wider issue, and it did kind of gain a little bit of traction on social media this week, is the cost of the streams that's being dictated by the EFL, for me, is just too much. It's too much because it's not like people use the season ticket argument, but season ticket, you have your breaks in between the games. So yes, you might effectively pay £10 to watch Sunderland, 10, 11, 12 quid, whatever, to watch Sunderland at home, but then it might be 2 weeks before you go again. So it's kind of spread out. And I know a Wigan fan who I follow and speak to on Twitter he pointed out that Wigan have 6 games in a 4-week period. So that's a lot of money to be spending on football that otherwise you might not usually spend, especially when you consider your direct debit, your season ticket or whatever, or, you pay 100 quid every 3 months. So it's actually costing you more to watch it online than it is in theory to direct debit a season ticket, for instance. So I think they have kind of lost the fans a bit because I just think it is effectively too much money for what isn't the full experience of football. It's a very diluted experience. So, and I just think a lot of people are like, they're reluctant to pay £10 a go when it's not got the same feel to it, and the football is ultimately just boring to watch.
Okay, well, Gav looks like he's turned white, so that probably means he's calmed down now, and that's probably a good way of ending.
Yeah, just don't ask us about Parkinson again.
Yeah, we'll end the podcast here. So thanks, Tom. Thanks, Gav, for coming on. It's been I call it another therapy session. I think it's been quite maybe not as therapeutic as last week, but reasonably therapeutic nonetheless. So thanks guys, for coming on. Please remember to subscribe to ROKER Report and read all the good stuff on the website of the app. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and please let us know on Twitter if you think we're talking shit, because it's good to have a nice friendly debate on there.